Gentlemen, start your engines, brothers.
Yep, it is the breakdown over here at Breaking Balls. Post Duels at Daytona edition. I keep wanting to say the Clash ad. It's still on my mind for whatever reason. I think it's a spectacle at this point. But no, it is Duel season. We're stricter plate racing, and with that you get some calamity. I don't know if this is what we expected tonight or not, but two very different races there. Very, very different. You kind of shook it up there between 1 and 2. What were your thoughts overall on the night here?
Yeah, fun to watch racing, especially on a Thursday, kind of to get the blood flowing. A nice surprise after a long day of work and everything here. But Heat 1, I mean, let's not bury the lead here. Joey Logano wins Heat 1. Bob, it just seemed like, I don't know. It didn't necessarily feel like it was that aggressive of a race. It kind of just felt like they were comfortable riding around a little bit in that one. I don't know. What did you make of that race, Bob?
Yeah, you definitely had a more controlled race here, where you get kind of the follow the leader, whether it's by default or everyone's just kind of wanting to keep the cars clean. I'm not really sure if that was the race flow or not. But early on, when you had all the Chevys kind of pit together and kind of got off schedule compared to the Fords, you kind of had two different packs going on that couldn't really catch up to one another, and it really became a tale of two different races there. So you didn't really have that full pack racing, and so when you already got the field split in half already, you basically got a quarter of the field racing there for the win. So I think that's part of the reason you got kind of a slower pace today.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, one of the more interesting things that was noticeable to me just kind of watching the broadcast was it's great to be able to kind of identify the manufacturers on the cars, other than just by decals and knowing because of the numbers. NASCAR made the change. Each manufacturer this year has a little bit different of a front end, kind of able to put a little bit of their own touch into the car. So interesting to see what teams are doing there. In the first heat, it kind of, like you said, everybody kind of seemed to stick with their own. Toyotas and Fords kind of seemed to be up towards the front. Toyotas obviously sticking towards the middle of the pack, weren't able to find a ton of success, but it was kind of odd, Bob, to see that Chevy pack just like you said, the tale of two races almost kind of. I think it was broken off at about just after ninth place or 10th there. But it was just so crazy to see that it was so split on manufacturer lines like that. You don't often see it.
Yeah, you don't, but it seems like the last probably 5, 6, 7 years, it's definitely become more of the normal when you get at these plate races where it's not just teams sticking together. It's not just, Hendrick sticking together or Gibbs sticking together. It's, manufacturers. It's SHR and Penske. If it's a Ford, they'll stick together. You saw that in the second race, especially. We won't spoil it, obviously, but manufacturers stuck together. They didn't just jump out and leave one another. And I think when you get that in the first race, all the Fords were together. Kind of made it to where, outside Christopher Bell there at the end, kind of making it a race on his own. Kind of, nobody wanted to get out and make it, to where the Chevys caught up toward the end. They wanted to keep status quo. And then, with 3-2 to go, then it kind of got a little bit more racy. You saw Blaney and I'm blanking here, Logano kind of pair up, and you saw Harvick and Bell kind of go to the outside, kind of splitting up. You saw the Penske boys kind of stay together and did a little bit better than last year with Joe Logano nose first into the fence there. But, at the end of the day, it was clean racing. That last lap was fun because of that. They didn't wreck each other. They weren't bumping, really. It was just trying to get a run. And you see kind of the struggle with this restrictor plate package ad where it takes a lot to generate a run. It takes more than, 2 or 3 cars. I think that's why you saw Christopher Bell kind of come up short at the end there. But, hey, for being kind of the appetizer before the 500, you can't ask for much more than these 2 races.
Yeah, what I will say is it definitely seems like these guys are still kind of feeling these cars out a little bit. It felt like with the first race being at the Clash, they were definitely comfortable kind of being a little bit more aggressive with the contact because obviously you're traveling at lower speed, so it kind of feels like it's a little bit lower risk to kind of move a guy. So what I thought was interesting about Heat 1 was there just wasn't a lot of risk taking as far as trying to move and bump and things like that. towards the end there, like you said, I think it was the manufacturers tried to stick together in the end because, like you said, Christopher Bell tried to make something happen. Kind of the only interesting part of that race, they weren't kind of following each other around, was when he kind of made that move to the outside. Bubba initially followed him, and then I believe it was coming off of, I want to say it was turn 4. They were coming off, and Christopher Bell made his move to the inside and kind of took a dive, and Bubba just didn't follow him. And it was kind of that sealed Christopher Bell's fate, because then he couldn't really find a pusher. Everything kind of sorted itself out from there, but it was just interesting to see, because it was very noticeable that, you know, if you're not aware of what restrictor plate racing is like, and you haven't seen the Daytona a whole ton, you need a guy pushing you, and you need a car behind you with that support. As soon as Christopher Bell didn't have any, you knew he wasn't necessarily going to fare well, but he was still able to impressively drive up and get into second place there, Bob. I was really impressed with how he was able to drive that car at the end of the race.
Definitely, because especially in that first race with all the Fords kind of stacked together, the Fords were the class of the field tonight. I think that's no joke, no bones about it there. I don't think that's a hot take if you watched either race. But the Fords had the speed tonight, and Christopher Bell, being able to hang around that, obviously is impressive there. Because when you look at the Chevys that were in the first heat, you had Bowman, you had Chastain, you had Austin Dillon, Eric Jones. There was a couple guys in there. When that pit strategy cycle out and they couldn't catch up to the Fords, you don't really know if they have a good enough car or not. You don't really know what they're going to look like on Sunday. So it's kind of hard to gauge that. But with all the Fords there, it shows the differences between the two manufacturers. The Fords, when they strung out together, they had the speed that you couldn't catch them there. And it's the little things like that add up, because, Christopher Bell, his teammate Bubba Wallace, or his manufacturing teammate Bubba Wallace didn't help him, but they're going to be in the race. It's the little things that were mistakes like that may not win a race for Bubba or Chris, but mistakes like Chandler Smith speeding on pit road there, halfway into the run. All he's got to do is, outrun Zane Smith or Jimmy Johnson. There's, 2 cars he's got to outrun. And he had a decent car in that Colleague car today. But as soon as you get out of the pack there and there's no cautions there, you're kind of screwed. And a speeding penalty like that, you have one chance to not make a mistake. And he made the mistake.
Yeah, it's just, his youth definitely showed. I mean, not to say that the moment was too big for him or anything like that. I'm not willing to say that, a dual race on a Thursday is too big for a professional race car driver. But at the end of the day, I mean, you just can't make a mistake like that, especially when you got to drive your way in. You knew that Jimmy Johnson was going to be driving terribly aggressively in that race, so you knew you had a really good shot at getting in. So I don't know, man. Just kind of a heartbreaker for Chandler Smith, because you would have loved to see him have the opportunity, especially in that Colleague machine that looked to be pretty good there. But just a shame, Bob. It was one of those things. I am very happy for Zane Smith, though. Think it's gonna, hopefully he makes the most of this opportunity. Obviously, if you have a pulse and you've watched racing in the last 20 years, you're excited to see Jimmy Johnson back behind the wheel. So that kind of goes without saying. But Bob, we were kind of talking about it, how the first heat was, they were a little bit hesitant to kind of get into each other, not a lot of beating and banging. And Bob, things kind of shifted in more ways than one in the second heat, because the Chevys found a little bit of speed and the contact picked up a lot. I mean, we saw Kyle Busch get spun into the wall. There was all sorts of things that happened here, Bob. But what do you make of this second race?
You mentioned the Chevys had the speed there because they actually were, together with the whole pack there. I think that makes a difference there. It's probably an equal speed there between the Fords and Chevys. We're probably blowing the first one out of proportion. But, at the end of the day, you look at who won. A Ford won. Almirola won.
I mean, yeah, ultimately, kind of crazy. I mean, it was good to see that the choose rule didn't mess Ulrich up this week. It was good to see, he kind of figured out when to choose. So very proud of him there. But just a good run from them. Before we get too far from it, Bob, because it was something that you kind of triggered in my brain, I think maybe the Heats kind of took the shape of their leader a little bit, because I think there's something to be said about Kyle Larson hanging around and kind of staying in the front of the race the entire time of that heat, and kind of keeping pace, keeping the speed going, kind of keeping things organized, as opposed to Alex Bowman in the first race. I mean, he just dipped out immediately, kind of got into a little bit of trouble, realized he wasn't going to be much of a player in the race, and just kind of kept his car clean. So I think that did kind of set the tempo. I don't know if I'm crazy, but carry on. I apologize for interrupting your breakdown here, Bob. That's on me.
It is okay. It is okay. You look at the speed, though, between the Chevys and Fords, definitely equalized if they're together. But it was just more chaotic in general with this race. You know, it's flat out single file for the most part in the first race, no cautions. Early on, you get Justin Haley's window going flying. The plexiglass passenger window gets sucked out. So, you know, you get the field stacked back up there. Just too wide racing most of the race. You know, guys not really, you know, racing each other super duper hard, but not giving each other an inch out there for a qualifier race for the most part there. Guys were racing each other like it was kind of, the first stage on Sunday. It more felt like there where, track position was key. You saw a lot of aggressive pushes, especially Daniel Suarez on Kyle Busch. I mean, good Lord have mercy. We'll get into that here in a minute, but some of those pushes were brutal. And then, of course, you get the wreck at, the 3/4 mark, probably around there, where it takes out, most of the qualifier cars. And, you have the back mark turtle getting in there for Conor Daly. And, this second duel was just the opposite. It was literally, like you said, it was the 180 compared to what the first duel was.
Yeah, just flip the script 100% and turn the other, kind of like an hourglass. You just kind of turned it right over, and we got the exact opposite of the first heat. Competitive racing all the way through. Kind of interesting because Chase Elliott struggled, ended up with a really strong finish, but kind of had to claw his way back into this one. So really interesting. We've been kind of something to keep watching because we've been talking about the struggles with that 9 car. Be interesting to see. He had some comments after the race how he just felt like they just don't have it quite figured out with that car for whatever reason. But I mean, it just seemed like the willingness to bump and beat and bang in this race was just so much. It was so ever present as opposed to in the first heat. I mean, Daniel Suarez, before he ended up turning Kyle Busch, I mean, he was on him really kind of making his life miserable on his back bumper for about 2 or 3 laps until finally, I mean, Bob, I'll ask you what your opinion on it is, but it just looked like he flat out just kind of turned him. I mean, you don't really see the wheels turn, but I mean, if you're driving on a guy's back bumper like that, kind of messing with his air, you know what the end result's going to be. So, Bob, I'm interested to hear your take on the Suarez versus Kyle Busch incident.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything too much to read into. I think it's just restrictor plate racing. I think it's, Suarez's car. We saw pushes like that multiple times, like I said earlier, where we kind of had a feeling something like that was probably going to happen. Just the way that, some cars just don't like to push. Some cars are better as like the pushy compared to the pusher. It sounds crazy, I know, but some of these cars are just set up and designed when they get off the trailer that, it just kind of works that way. And for whatever reason, Daniel Suarez, when it got to the back end of Kyle Busch's car, no matter what, it just was never comfortable. And, it reminded me not necessarily the same exact way because Logano blocked last year on Buescher to get sent into the wall, but the wreck was similar where he gets turned and then goes nose first into the back straightaway wall toward the end of the race. Very similar style there. Kyle Busch with a hard lick there, but more than anything, I think for him, he's pissed because it's a great car he lost.
Yeah. I think Kyle Busch obviously really mad because he loved that car. But on the other hand, the other guy you really got to feel bad for here is Austin Hill, man. I mean, a guy who's really trying to race his way into this and just kind of got caught up in the wash. Kind of seemed like Travis Pastrana wasn't paying a ton of attention almost. I mean, I love Travis Pastrana. You would not find a bigger fan of the 199 growing up. Childhood hero, loved everything he did, everything he's been to action sports. But it just kind of seemed like if you watch the replay, he just drove right through it. I mean, didn't really slow down, saw the contact, saw the smoke in front of him, just kept on the gas. It seemed like something that he really just wasn't paying attention. And it ended up costing Austin Hill because he was really, really doing well in the race, was going to qualify for the Daytona 500. And obviously that wreck goes out and costs him. And you just hate to see that. I mean, it's one of these things that you love the spectacle of bringing a guy in and kind of, bringing his fan base to the sport and kind of having new eyes. But at the end of the day, you need them to make sure that they're paying attention. They're able to drive the car. Not saying that he can't, because obviously he did race his way in to the duels. So all credit to that. Be interested to see how he does on Sunday, though, because all signs point to him not necessarily being the most observant driver for the Daytona 500, Bob, and that could spell trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to definitely blame, the guy that's making his first start. That this is part of the reason that NASCAR should give these guys some practice before they throw them out there on the track, besides just qualifying. But I think more than anything, it's just, there's a wreck. It's hard to see moving forward, what's on the track. He even said that, when you're in the car, it's not the same as TV. You only see what's in front of you. You see some smoke. You see the guy check up in front of you. I think it's just unfortunate circumstances more than anything there. And for Austin Hill, it really is just shitty because, like you said, he was going to make the Daytona 500. Conor Daly's car, was so far off the pace, it would have taken a miracle. And Pastrana wrecking out and Austin Hill wrecking out. Austin Hill probably should have. This is just, the couch racer, the armchair quarterback in me saying, he should have just kind of rode around even further in the back. He was already kind of doing that, so it's easy to say. But seeing him get plowed into when he had basically locked himself already in, and that 1% chance happening for Conor Daly. Hey, for him, for that money team, it's exciting. It's a great story. He's not going to apologize for it, but as far as competitiveness, Austin Hill definitely would have been, in my opinion, more exciting to see. But not going to cry over spilled milk, because at the end of the day, Floyd Mayweather is going to be in the Daytona 500, and damn it, that's fun.
Bob, it's one of these things that you go to Las Vegas and you look at the roulette wheel, and every now and again you see it, and you say, I wonder what the odds are on that green space. And ladies and gentlemen, tonight, Conor Daly pulled up to the roulette wheel that is racing at Daytona, and he spun it, and he put all of his money on 00 in the green, and somehow, some way, against all the odds, it hit. And Conor Daly is going to be racing in the Daytona 500. I don't even necessarily know if Floyd Mayweather can spell Money Team Racing nor Daytona 500, but he will be there as a team owner, and I am excited to see it. But, Bob, I don't have the words for it, to be honest with you. It was one of those things that when you saw that car porpoising like an F1 car before the race, kind of going up and down, rocking, not able to accelerate at all, the fact that they were able to make the adjustments to that car to even get it on the track and make it serviceable for him, I mean, all credit to Conor Daly, I guess, but yikes, man. I mean, go ahead, Bob.
Well, and that's the thing. You mentioned, it's a miracle they got it on track. They didn't qualify on Wednesday night. They had an oil pump that went, and exploded, and they had to, repair that after the impound on Wednesday night. And so, they had to go through tech then on Thursday. It's a whole ordeal, completely out of the whole, schedule, the whole just, repertoire of everyone else. And so, you see that car out there, boom, 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 just, up and down, up and down. You're thinking, oh God, he hasn't even taken the green flag. This car's not even going to make it on the first lap. Like, there's no way. And the fact that, a couple timely cautions just to keep him around, on the lead lap, a lap down, hey, it's good for them. Sometimes it takes an act of God, but you're not going to complain about it, because when that 1% happens, usually it's in good fortune, and for them it is. And my question to you is, I believe he finished a lap down in the 60 laps from the duels there. How many laps do you think he ends up down in the 500? 200 laps total. What do you think here?
Oh man, I mean 200 laps total. I mean, I don't know, Bob, but I would argue it may be double digits. It could get to double digits. It's I don't know, man. It's not a matter of if it gets to double digits. It's just a matter of if NASCAR hangs on long enough to let it get to double digits. I don't know. I'm very anxious to see it, but whatever that number is, if you could find a line on it, hammer the over and send your children to college, because it's one of the safest bets I've ever seen. I mean, wow. it was, yeah, that car was not good, Bob. And the fact that it's going to be in the Daytona 500 is almost a crime to racing. But regardless, here we are. And eef.
Yeah, I probably would have rather had seen Chandler Smith in or Austin Hill, but Travis Pastrana, Jimmy Johnson, Zane Smith, and Conor Daly. Those are your 4 open cars for the Daytona 500.
Who do you think lasts longer in the Daytona 500? Conor Daly or his co-host Joey Molinari? Just a question, just something. Do you think he could do an impression of a race car driver and maybe be a better fit for the drive? Who knows, Bob? These are my questions.
I don't think anybody can go fast in that money team car. I don't think you could put Dale Earnhardt behind that car and it would go fast. But, obviously, we're talking cars on track, but a little bit of silly season leaked into old Daytona week, old speed weeks here. I guess we could start with the news today. Trackhouse, obviously, there's been some questions. If you've been listening to us on YouTube, we've talked about, their contract situation with Suarez and Chastain. Both going to be free agents. Chastain was probably going to be sought after. Depending on what opened up, I think SHR would probably like his services, definitely. Well, Mr. Pitbull called ad, and Ross answered. He signed the dotted line. They announced this morning on old Thursday morning that Trackhouse and Ross Chastain have signed an extension. Ty Norris did not say the exact number, but did say that, quote, Ross is going to have a gray in his beard when he's done here, so would imagine it is a very, very long-term extension, probably at least 4 or 5 years. Very good to see. He's kind of the anchor of that team, coming over with Ganassi. Memorable, 2 wins, the wall ride, whatever. What was it? The watermelon, the hail melon. That's a match made in heaven. I'm glad to see that they've gotten this, before the season's done. And then you get Suarez too, Ad. Suarez announces, I think, a 2-year extension. So Trackhouse is wrapped up. What were your thoughts on both guys getting wrapped up there?
Bob, I just have the funniest image in my head of Pitbull kicking in the door of a boardroom somewhere, and just walking in with, all of a sudden, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, I know you want me. And it's literally just Pitbull all of a sudden doing a I know you want me style contract pitch for both Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. And I'm just so glad it worked. We can keep the magic going at Trackhouse. They seem to have something going. And I don't know, man. Maybe they got some hotel room service to celebrate. Maybe they're going to be pouring some gasolina in those cars for years to come. I'm just going to keep naming Pitbull songs at this time, Bob, to make sure that we understand that Pitbull is indeed a part owner of Trackhouse Racing. So, but in all seriousness, Bob, it just is good for the organizational health moving forward. A team that had a lot of success. It will be interesting to see if they can both keep it going, but no surprise to see that they wanted to stay with both of these guys. Obviously, Chastain in the longer term, but Daniel Suarez has been a really formidable and serviceable driver for them, so no surprises to see that there's not a lot of movement on that team.
It's great to see the loyalty, too. Like I said, with Chastain, and he came over with Ganassi, and then obviously Suarez has been the foundation of Trackhouse since they opened doors. This will be Suarez's longest tenure with the team. He had 2 years with Gibbs. He had the SHR. He had the 1 year with the 96 car, the Toyota team that I can't even remember. I'm glad to see a guy like Daniel Suarez not have to worry about his seat next year. That's the biggest thing. To get both these guys wrapped up, not have to worry about that. We saw with Kyle Busch what it was like last year with that cloud over your head, not knowing where you're going to drive. Can't imagine what that's like. So a guy like Daniel Suarez that has been passed around kind of his entire, racing career, to have this home and have this certainty for the next couple of years, he's going to be driving free this year, I have a feeling.
I'll say this, Bob, with the way that Daniel Suarez was driving tonight, especially, kind of roughing up Kyle Busch a little bit, as we've made it kind of known on this podcast, I am studying for the bar. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a little bit of a Fourth Amendment lesson, because in order to qualify for Fourth Amendment protection in the United States, you've got to be subject to action by a state actor, someone acting on behalf of the government. And I don't know what the laws look like in Mexico, However, I would like to argue that tonight Daniel Suarez was acting as a government agent of Mexico in such a way that he wrecked Kyle Busch intentionally. Because if they weren't going to get him in prison on that gun charge, they were at least going to put him into the wall and wreck his car. So I guess shout out to the Mexican government for organizing that hit at Daytona, the great American race. I'll declare it as an act of terrorism. And never mind, we're just going to stop talking before this goes too far, Bob. Please take this.
I think Adam has been a little bit too deep on some Twitter chains this evening, and that's okay. I'm not going to let him, feel like he's been the only one. But I like the effort there.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some pizza at this pizza parlor in DC. Anyway, moving on.
Oh man, I'm okay. Well. Trackhouse wasn't the only one that had some extensions this week here. I'm just gonna segue it for you.
I love when this happens.
We're just gonna keep. I don't even know how to handle it. I really don't. Trackhouse wasn't the only one that had an extension over here. Hendrick Motorsports has had some questions. Everyone else has been locked up for the team, but Alex Bowman and Ally was the big question mark going forward here, and I'm glad to see that both of them have signed extensions. Ally through 2029, a 5-year contract extension, and Mr. Bowman a 2-year, I believe, extension with Hendrick through 2026. So the 48 team going to be looking familiar for the next few years. The Hendrick stable is locked up.
Yeah. No, 100%, Bob. And, big congratulations to Alex Bowman, who sits on the pole this weekend. And that is in no way a statement about his sexuality in any way, shape, or form, Bob. I like to give Alex Bowman a lot of crap here on this show. But all joking aside, we're very, very happy to see him back in that Hendrick seat. I was skeptical. I really thought that they were going to go in another direction. I thought that they may have tried to lock up a guy like Ross Chastain. But this does make sense. I don't think there's a ton of surprises. We're not going to have to figure out who Ally likes more or if they're married to Bowman or the 48 or what it was, because it doesn't matter. Silly season gets less silly, which I enjoy. So congratulations, Mr. Bowman. You've got your seat.
I'm glad to see, a guy like Alex Bowman, Adam. We've seen him kind of the last 10 years or so. His climb in NASCAR has been fun to watch. Where it's a guy that's never been in the best equipment, and then he gets the opportunity in Hendrick, and he's obviously been the guy that everyone kind of gives the short end of the stick. I think with Chase Elliott, with Kyle Larson, obviously the championship pedigree over there, and people were kind of easy on William Byron at times. I think because for whatever reason. Alex Bowman's the one that actually wins more than William Byron statistically over there. So he's probably the third best driver. And, he's got the best sponsorship at Ally probably out of everyone besides Chase Elliott and Napa at Hendrick. I mean, that's a hell of a seat, a hell of a sponsorship combination for the 48. I mean, Alex Bowman's got to feel great that, you get that done before the year. Same with Suarez and Chastain. None of these drivers want to have this question mark going into the season. So to get it done before the season starts, before the 500 goes green, I mean, man, that's a weight off his shoulders, because everyone's been speculating, who's going to take that 48 seat? Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Nobody.
Yeah. I mean, it's just good to see. I mean, like you said, I was definitely hand up. I was in the speculating crew. I like doing stuff like that. But, Bob, there was a couple things that we kind of, I forgot to mention, just, when we're coming fresh off of a race, it's just kind of hard to kind of remember what just happened right in front of you. But one of the new things that really kind of stuck out to me in the broadcast, Bob, was we got a new camera angle. And it kind of reminded you of a little bit of a 1990s TV segment, because we got ourselves a nice little sensor bar. Which, it's good to protect the team's information, stuff like that. But we put a nice small camera there that can see the dash. They didn't want to give any of that information away. So we get this weird block on our screen, Bob. It was a little bit confusing to see the first time it popped up.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. I don't like the execution of it just with the blurred bar. It's kind of, tough to see. F1 does it great where you have the helmet cam and you can see everything and there's no, vision impaired. You see everything clear as day. So for NASCAR to give you kind of, a little bit of that, but not the whole thing, it's just kind of a little frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, at least they're headed in the right direction. I mean, if you want to give NASCAR and at least you tried ribbon, that feels appropriate here. Because I mean, yeah, I've been very happy to see that they are trying to find new ways to give people access. I think the paid subscription to the scanner service. Not sure if we've talked about that on this show, but you can now pay to subscribe to hear the scanners and the radios every week. Something that I would definitely be doing as I listen to races. But Bob, it's just with cars getting back on track. It's a good part of the season, man. Anything's possible. You see guys, and they're you almost remind yourself. Like I was kind of the big shock again for me tonight was how about Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch having to work together a little bit tonight? I mean, you saw it, and it was kind of crazy because they're both such elite drivers and they have such control at the cars at such high speeds that it was so noticeable the push that they were able to give each other off of some of these straightaways. I mean, it's just remarkable now that, obviously with that inner manufacturer alliance between Chevy there to get, the meeting of the Kyles there, the elite Kyles driving the wheels of the single digit cars there, if we're just going to keep pointing out their similarities. Very cool to see kind of the new alliances come to fruition a little bit tonight, Bob.
Yeah, it was definitely a better pairing than Kyle Busch and Daniel Suarez. So, we'll see if that translates over to the 500. Before we get into the 500 picks ad, just one last note for housekeeping, at least on my end here. I gotta say, Ford is dominating these Daytona races. This is the fourth straight dual win. You got Keselowski and Buescher sweeping RFK last year. They've also won 9 of the last 12 dual races that Mike Joy mentioned. So that's, something to keep in mind moving forward at the 500. Austin Cindric's the defending 500 champion. Obviously, Denny Hamlin, pretty darn good at this race. Couple-time winner. Probably have won it 3 or 4 more times. There was a thread going around on Twitter the last week where it was kind of showing how he could be a 7-8 time 500 winner. I mean, that's for as much as we say these races are lottery races, it's luck. There's some of these guys that they have skill. They're good at these tracks. Whether it's Hamlin, Wallace, Blaney. Some of these guys, when you look at all these plate races the last few years, they're always consistently in that top 5, that top 10. Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano. It's similar guys, and you obviously get some of those lottery kind of top 5, top 10 winners. But a lot of the times it's the same veterans at the end of the day. So unless I've missed something, or I think it's time to get to the nitty gritty. The Great American Race Sunday, Fox. If you're not watching it, you're not American. If your friends aren't watching it, if your parents aren't watching it, they're not American. Who do you got winning it?
Ladies and gentlemen, break out the apple pie, go through a McDonald's drive-thru and invest everything you own in the stock market because it's time to act like an American. And Bob, for the Great American Race, I'm picking an American hero, a man who has stood tall with us for the better part of 3 decades at this point, a man who we say goodbye to at the end of the season. And Bob, I love storybook endings because I think Happy Harvick may not even make anything go. It may not even make any noise in the playoffs this year or anything, but I do think he gets there, and I think he gets there via Daytona 500 win. I think that car is good enough. I think he's got enough clout with drivers that he's got the right people to work with him. I think this is Kevin Harvick's Daytona 500 to lose. Bet it.
Well, it would be a hell of a story if that happens. For the narrative, just for the scene, obviously, a first ballot Hall of Famer, a champion of the sport, one of the greats. I think when he's gone, we're going to be, looking back saying, wow, Kevin Harvick really did have a lasting impact on the sport. So one more Daytona 500 would be a hell of a story there in that 4 car. But I'm going with a guy that he's been very close the last few years. Last year was a great teammate, came up short. I think he's due for it. I think Ryan Blaney might have the car to beat this year. It seemed like the Penske Fords were just, they were so easy to drive this week. It looks like they've got some speed, but more than anything, their handling is good. And if it becomes a game of numbers, the Fords have the upper hand there. And Ryan Blaney is one of the best plate racers in the game. I think he's due for it. So many times he's been, in that top 5 and, had a wreck at the last lap or, a late push by somebody else. Maybe Austin Cindric, not, putting any names here, but, he's just come up short, and I think he's due for it. So I'm going Ryan Blaney on Sunday wins the Daytona 500 for Penske back-to-back years.
All right. I like that pick, Bob. It kind of feels like, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Maybe we shut that up early this year for Ryan Blaney. He gets a win pretty, week 1 here at the Great American Race. So, Bob, that feels like it just about concludes what we've got going on. I mean, anything else on your agenda that you'd like to talk about there, Bob?
No, I'm excited. It's going to be a long weekend of racing, but Friday night the trucks, Saturday afternoon, evening Xfinity, Saturday morning Frankie Muniz in the ARCA series. I'm very excited about that. That's going to be fun to watch there. His debut in the Hair Club car. Him and Joe Logano kind of teaming up with some awareness there for some hair plugs. So love to see that. But no, I had exciting weekend for the Great American Race. And just for the record, you said apple pie. I don't like apple pie, and I'm still a red-blooded American. So you know what? Don't feel bad, listeners. You're not the only ones out there.
Hand up, I don't like apple pie either. Are we an anti-apple pie podcast?
Thank you.
I don't like
it. Be. There you go.
It's a texture thing for me. Like the flavors, I don't mind the flavor. I mean, it's just I don't know. Why would I eat baby food in a crust?
I don't like apple pie, and I don't like baseball. I wouldn't pass the citizenship test, but thank God was born in the States.
Ladies and gentlemen, a naturalized citizen, Bob Perry. But naturalized, unnaturalized, if you're an American citizen, you're watching the Great American Race at Daytona this Sunday. Bob, we've got one last final word to say to the people. Give it to them. Why should we be excited about the Daytona 500?
Boogity.